Why are gas stations always built right next to other gas stations? Why is it that I can drive for a mile without finding a coffee shop and then stumble across three on the same corner? Why do grocery stores, auto repair shops, and restaurants always seem to exist in groups instead of being spread evenly throughout a community? While there are several factors that might go into deciding where to place your business, clusters of similar companies can be explained by a very simple story called Hotelling's model of spatial competition. Imagine that you sell ice cream at the beach. Your beach is 1 mile long and you have no competition. Where would you place your cart in order to sell the most product? In the middle. The 1/2 mile walk may be too far for some people at each end of the beach, but your cart serves as many people as possible. One day you show up at work just as your cousin Teddy is arriving at the beach with his own ice cream cart. In fact, he's selling exactly the same type of ice cream as you are. You agree that you will split the beach in half. In order to ensure that customers don't have to walk too far, you set up your cart a 1/4 mile south of the beach center, right in the middle of your territory. Teddy sets up a 1/4 mile north of the center in the middle of Teddy territory. With this agreement, everyone south of you buys ice cream from you. Everyone north of Teddy buys from him, and the 50% of beachgoers in between walk to the closest cart. No one walks more than a 1/4 of a mile, and both vendors sell to half of the beachgoers. Game theorists consider this a socially optimal solution. It minimizes the maximum number of steps any visitor must take in order to reach an ice cream cart. The next day, when you arrive at work, Teddy has set up his cart in the middle of the beach. You return to your location a 1/4 mile south of center and get the 25% of customers to the south of you. Teddy still gets all of the customers north in Teddy territory, but now you split the 25% of people in between the two carts. Day 3 of the ice cream wars, you get to the beach early and set up right in the center of Teddy territory, assuming you'll serve the 75% of beachgoers to your south, leaving your cousin to sell to the 25% of customers to the north. When Teddy arrives, he sets up just south of you, stealing all of the southerly customers and leaving you with a small group of people to the north. Not to be outdone, you move 10 paces south of Teddy to regain your customers. When you take a midday break, Teddy shuffles 10 paces south of you and again steals back all the customers to the far end of the beach. Throughout the course of the day, both of you continue to periodically move south towards the bulk of the ice cream buyers until both of you eventually end up at the center of the beach, back to back, each serving 50% of the ice cream hungry beachgoers. At this point, you and your competitive cousin have reached what game theorists call a Nash equilibrium, the point where neither of you can improve your position by deviating from your current strategy. Your original strategy, where you were each a 1/4 mile from the middle of the beach, didn't last because it wasn't a Nash equilibrium. Either of you could move your cart towards the other to sell more ice cream. With both of you now in the center of the beach, you can't reposition your cart closer to your furthest customers without making your current customers worse off. However, you no longer have a socially optimal solution, since customers at either end of the beach have to walk further than necessary to get a sweet treat. Think about all the fast food chains, clothing boutiques, or mobile phone kiosks at the mall. Customers may be better served by distributing services throughout a community, but this leaves businesses vulnerable to aggressive competition. In the real world, customers come from more than one direction, and businesses are free to compete with marketing strategies by differentiating their product line and with price cuts. But at the heart of their strategy, companies like to keep their competition as close as possible.
So I hope the video gave you guys a good idea of what the hotelling model of spatial competition looks like. In this video, I'll talk about the median voter theorem, which I believe is more of a real-life application of the hotelling model. So what does the median voter theorem say? It says that in a majority rule voting system, the candidate or the party most preferred by the median voter will be selected. So this means that the candidate whose policies are centrist rather than on the extreme ends are most likely to win an election where political views are evenly distributed from left to right. But why? So I'll show you by this illustration. Consider this hypothetical situation where 10 voters are distributed evenly on a one-dimensional space. The voter on the far left, which is 1, has the most radically left view, and the one on the far right, which is person number 10, has the most radically right view. further assume that the voters will vote for the candidate who is closest to them in this one-dimensional spectrum of political view. All right, let's further assume that we have two candidates, Mr. Biden on the far left and Mr. Trump on the far right. So I hope I don't offend anyone from this. I just use these two candidates because the primary elections are coming up, and I thought this would be somewhat relevant to all of you. So since voters are voting for those who are closest to them, Biden will take votes from person 1 through 5, while Trump will take votes from person 6 through 10. Now imagine if Biden wanted to get the vote from the 6th guy, what he may do is make his political views slightly less from the extreme left and align his views to the 3rd guy. And by doing so, the 6th person now sees Biden as a more promising candidate since he is closer to his views, so he votes for Biden. You see, Biden is only 3 persons away from person 6, while Trump is 4 persons away from person 6. And as I said before, these people want to vote for whoever is closest to them in this political spectrum. So if there's one thing about Trump, he does not like losing. So he wants to retaliate by taking his 6th person back, but going even further to take the 5th guy from Biden. So what he does is he aligns his view to the 7th person, and by doing so, now the 5th person is now closer to Trump in his view, so he will vote for Trump. Now the embittered Biden makes further compromise in his campaign promises to align more with the right and moves to attain the 5th person back. And you can see that the poor person number 6 is completely split between whether to vote for Biden or Trump. And finally, Trump puts an end to the duel by aligning his view to the 6th guy and allowing a tie of 50% of the people voting for Biden and the other 50 voting for Trump. And this is a Nash equilibrium because neither candidate at this point has an incentive to deviate to anywhere else given that the other person is already on the middle. So this is kind of an interesting outcome because this is where they started off in the beginning when they were on the far extreme. Biden had 5, Trump had the other 5. But now, due to the democratic voting process, these candidates look very alike in their political views. They didn't have to start from the opposite ends to arrive at this Nash equilibrium. Wherever they may have started on the spectrum, they will eventually meet at the middle in order to get the most popular votes. Now, how relevant is the spatial model in today's political climate? I would say it's not too relevant because there's just too many factors that affect whether you'll be elected. And you can see that actually the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate have not been similar in their view in the last few election cycle. And I think this is because there's a lot of different factors that get into why somebody's elected. So in this case, we have to make some extreme assumptions that political candidates can just willy-nilly change their political campaign promises, and that citizens, are distributed evenly across this political spectrum. But in real life, this is not the case. But it's still an interesting idea.